The steam rose from the industrial sink, coating my raw hands in a film of moisture that never quite dried. My fingertips had long since wrinkled into soft ridges, my nails brittle from the harsh chemicals we used to sanitize the endless parade of plates, glasses, and silverware that cycled through the casino's kitchen. I tucked a strand of hair behind my ear with my forearm, careful not to touch my face with my soap-slick hands. "Martinez, we need more champagne flutes for the high rollers room," barked Jerome, the floor manager who never bothered to learn my first name. "ASAP." "Yes, sir," I replied, reaching for the special rack where we kept the crystal. "My name is Elise," I wanted to say. "I've worked here for 7 months." But the word stayed trapped in my throat, like so many things these days. Through the small window that connected the dishwashing station to the rest of the kitchen, I could see the chaos of the Saturday night rush. Chefs shouting orders, waitstaff hurrying with trays balanced precariously on their palms, bartenders shaking cocktails with practiced flourishes. Beyond them all, through the swinging doors that led to the casino floor, occasional flashes of light and bursts of sound escaped, slot machines chiming their false promises, dealers calling numbers, the collective murmur of hundreds of people chasing fortune. I was invisible here, hidden away in this steamy corner, arms submerged to my elbows in sudsy water, but that invisibility was a comfort. It kept me safe. It kept Jamie safe. My 6-year-old son would be asleep by now, curled up in his Batman pajamas, clutching the stuffed dinosaur his father had given him before disappearing from our lives 3 years ago. Mrs. Abernathy from apartment 4B was watching him. She charged less than most sitters, partly out of pity, I suspected, and partly because she was lonely. Whatever the reason, I was grateful. The night shift paid an extra $1.50 per hour, and with rent due in 5 days, I needed every cent. I checked my watch. A cheap digital thing with a cracked face and a fraying band. 4 more hours to go. My lower back ached from standing, and my left shoulder had developed a persistent twinge from the repetitive motion of scrubbing. But it was steady work, legal work, safe work. The kitchen doors swung open with more force than usual, and the noise level dropped abruptly. I glanced up, curious about the sudden change in atmosphere. A group of men in tailored suits had entered, looking out of place among the kitchen staff in their stained aprons and white uniforms. "Mr. Castellano would like to inspect the kitchen," announced a broad-shouldered man with a shaved head and a scar that ran from his left ear to the corner of his mouth. He didn't wait for permission, simply stepped aside to make way for someone behind him. The name registered vaguely in my mind. Castellano. I'd heard it whispered among the staff, always with a mixture of fear and reverence. He owned the casino, or at least that's what people said. No one seemed to know for certain, and the official paperwork listed some corporate entity as the proprietor. But everyone knew who really held the power at the Royal Flush. I kept my head down, focusing on my task. The rich and powerful didn't concern themselves with people like me. I was part of the machinery, as functional and unremarkable as the dishwashers I operated. I reached for another glass, plunging it into the soapy water. That's when I felt it. A peculiar sensation, like a physical weight against my skin. I looked up, through the glass partition that separated the dishwashing station from the rest of the kitchen, and found myself caught in the gaze of a man I had never seen before. He stood perfectly still amid the bustling kitchen, his presence commanding a bubble of space around him that no one dared to enter. Tall and broad-shouldered, he wore a charcoal gray suit that looked as though it had been painted onto his frame. His hair was dark, almost black, swept back from a face that was all sharp angles and shadows, but it was his eyes that held me, pale blue, startling in their intensity, and fixed directly on me. A plate slipped from my fingers, shattering in the sink with a crash that seemed to echo in the sudden silence of my mind. The sound broke whatever strange spell had fallen over me. I hurriedly began gathering the broken pieces, mortified by my clumsiness and irrationally fearful of drawing attention. "You're bleeding," said a voice, deep and quiet, much closer than I expected. I looked up, startled to find him standing on the other side of my workstation. I hadn't heard him approach. The other men in suits had formed a loose semicircle a few paces behind him, their expressions impassive, their eyes constantly scanning the room. I glanced down at my hand and saw a thin line of red welling up from my palm, where a shard of porcelain had sliced the skin. "It's nothing," I murmured, reaching for a clean towel. He didn't respond, but his eyes hadn't left my face. They moved now, taking in the damp wisps of hair that had escaped my ponytail, the tired shadows beneath my eyes, the faded uniform that hung loose on my frame. I fought the urge to shrink away from his scrutiny, to hide my chapped hands and the cheap watch that proclaimed my poverty as clearly as a neon sign. "Your name?" he asked, the question so quiet it might have been meant only for me, despite the audience of kitchen staff pretending not to watch our exchange. "Elise," I answered, surprised into honesty by the directness of his gaze. "Elise Martinez." Something flickered across his face. Recognition, perhaps, or interest, but it was gone before I could identify it. He extended his hand, not in greeting but palm up, an unmistakable command. "Let me see." I hesitated, aware of the eyes on us, of the power imbalance that yawned between us like a chasm, but there was something in his manner that made refusal seem impossible. Slowly, I placed my injured hand in his. His fingers were warm and dry against my damp skin, his touch surprisingly gentle as he examined the cut. "This needs attention," he stated. "Not a suggestion, but a fact. I have a first aid kit," offered Jerome, materializing at the man's elbow, eager to be of service. "We can take care of it right away, Mr. Castellano." So this was Castellano. The name fit him somehow, elegant and hard, with an edge of danger. He didn't acknowledge Jerome's offer, his eyes still fixed on my face with an intensity that made my pulse quicken. "Have it brought to my office," he said, and it took me a moment to realize he was speaking to one of the men behind him, not to me or Jerome. "Along with Ms. Martinez." Panic flared in my chest. "I can't," I blurted out. "My shift isn't over and I—" "Your shift is over," he interrupted, his tone gentle but brooking no argument. He turned to Jerome. "Ms. Martinez will be taking the rest of the night off, with pay." Jerome nodded rapidly. "Of course, Mr. Castellano, whatever you say." I wanted to protest further, to explain that I couldn't afford to miss even an hour of work, that I had a child waiting at home, that I didn't want to be singled out in any way. But the words died in my throat as Castellano's gaze returned to mine. "It wasn't a request," he said softly, and something in his eyes made me believe that refusing him would be more dangerous than following. One of his men approached, gesturing for me to follow him. Castellano released my hand, which I hadn't realized he was still holding. "I'll join you shortly," he said, and then turned away, continuing his inspection of the kitchen as though nothing unusual had occurred. I was led through a maze of hallways I'd never seen before, despite working at the casino for months. We passed through a door marked private and entered a different world, one of plush carpeting, subdued lighting, and hushed voices. The walls were paneled in dark wood, adorned with paintings that looked expensive even to my untrained eye. The man escorting me, who hadn't spoken a single word since we left the kitchen, stopped before a heavy oak door and knocked once before opening it and gesturing for me to enter. "Wait here," he instructed, finally breaking his silence. "Someone will attend to your hand until Mr. Castellano arrives." The door closed behind me with a soft click that nonetheless sounded like the tumbling of a lock. I stood alone in what was clearly an office, but unlike any I had ever seen. It was spacious and elegant, dominated by a massive desk of polished wood. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city lights spread out below like scattered gems on black velvet. A movement to my right startled me. A middle-aged woman in a crisp uniform approached with a small medical kit. "Let me see that cut, dear," she said kindly, gesturing to a leather sofa positioned near a fireplace, where flames danced merrily, casting the room in a warm glow. I sat, allowing her to clean and bandage my hand, my mind racing. Why had Castellano singled me out? What could he possibly want from someone like me? The questions tumbled through my thoughts, each more alarming than the last. "There you are," said the woman, securing the bandage with a gentle pat. "It's not deep. Should heal nicely." "Thank you," I replied automatically, my voice sounding strange to my own ears. "Do you know why I'm here?" She gave me a look that mingled sympathy with caution. "It's not my place to speculate on Mr. Castellano's business." She gathered the first aid supplies and moved toward the door. "Can I bring you anything while you wait? Water? Coffee?" I shook my head, and she slipped out, leaving me alone with my mounting anxiety. Minutes ticked by, marked by an ornate clock on the mantelpiece that looked like it cost more than 6 months of my rent. I perched on the edge of the sofa, afraid to sink into its luxurious comfort, feeling as out of place as a crow among peacocks. The door opened, and Castellano entered, now without his entourage. He'd removed his suit jacket, and the crisp white shirt he wore beneath it emphasized the breadth of his shoulders and the lean strength of his frame. He moved with the fluid grace of a predator, secure in his domain and his power. "Ms. Martinez," he said, crossing to a cabinet near the windows. "Would you care for a drink?" "No, thank you," I replied, struggling to keep my voice steady. "Mr. Castellano, I don't understand why I'm here." He poured himself what looked like whiskey into a crystal tumbler, his back to me. "Dominic," he said, "I'm sorry." He turned, those pale blue eyes finding mine again across the room. "My name is Dominic. I prefer it to Mr. Castellano in private conversation." Private conversation. The phrase sent a shiver of unease down my spine. What could someone like him possibly have to discuss privately with someone like me? "You've been working at my establishment for 7 months, he continued, moving to lean against the edge of his desk, studying me with that same unnerving intensity. Always the late shift, always alone, always watching the doors. My heart stuttered in my chest. He'd been keeping track of me? "How do you—" "I make it my business to know what happens in my casino," he interrupted smoothly. "Every employee, every customer, every transaction. Nothing occurs here without my knowledge." I swallowed hard, fighting the urge to flee. "I still don't understand why I'm here." A smile curved his lips, subtle and somehow dangerous. "Because I've been watching you, Elise Martinez, and I find myself curious." The way he said my name, rolling it off his tongue like he was tasting it, sent another tremor through me, not entirely of fear this time, which was perhaps more frightening still. "About what?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He took a sip of his whiskey, considering me over the rim of the glass. "About why a woman with your obvious intelligence and education is washing dishes in my kitchen. About why you flinch at loud noises and watch the doors. About who or what you're running from." The accuracy of his observations felt like a physical blow. I stood up, suddenly unable to remain seated under his scrutiny. "I'm not running from anything. I'm just trying to make a living, like everyone else." "Like everyone else," he repeated softly. "Is that why you use a different name on your employment forms than on your apartment lease? Why you walk a different route home each night? Why you've enrolled your son in a school across town rather than the one in your district?" Ice flooded my veins. Jamie. He knew about Jamie. "How dare you?" I whispered, anger temporarily overwhelming fear. "You've been spying on me? On my son?" Something shifted in his expression. Approval, perhaps, at my flash of defiance. "I told you, Elise. Nothing happens in my world without my knowledge." He set down his glass and straightened, taking a step toward me. "Especially when it concerns someone who interests me." I backed away, bumping into the sofa behind me. "I'm nobody. Just a dishwasher. There's nothing interesting about me." "I disagree," he said, continuing his approach until he stood directly before me, close enough that I could smell his cologne, something expensive and subtle, with notes of sandalwood and spice. "I find you very interesting indeed. A woman with secrets, living in fear, working herself to exhaustion to protect her child." A lump formed in my throat. "Please," I said, unsure what I was even asking for. "I just want to go home. My son is safe with Mrs. Abernathy," he finished for me. "She's a former school teacher, divorced, no children of her own. She drinks too much sherry on weekends but is otherwise reliable. Your son is sleeping soundly. He won't miss you for another hour." The depth of his knowledge terrified me. I stared up at him, trembling now. "What do you want from me?" His expression softened fractionally. "For now, just conversation." He gestured to the sofa. "Please sit. I promise you have nothing to fear from me tonight." Tonight. The qualifier wasn't lost on me. Reluctantly, I sank back onto the sofa, and he took a seat in an armchair opposite me, maintaining a distance that should have been reassuring, but somehow wasn't. "You're in trouble," he stated, Not a question, but a certainty. Financial, certainly. That much is obvious. But there's more. Someone dangerous. Someone you're hiding from. I remained silent, unwilling to confirm or deny his suspicions. My past was my own, my burden to carry. He studied me for a long moment, then nodded as if I had spoken. I respect your caution, but know this. I can help you, Elise. Whatever your problem, whoever you're running from, I have resources, power, protection. Why would you help me? I asked, genuinely baffled. You don't know me. A slow smile spread across his face, transforming his features from merely handsome to devastatingly beautiful. Let's just say I've developed a personal interest. His words hung in the air between us, heavy with implication. A personal interest. I'd heard variations of that phrase before, from men who saw my vulnerability as an opportunity. But something about Dominic Castellano's expression, the calm certainty in his eyes, told me this was different. More dangerous, perhaps. Mr. Castellano, Dominic, he corrected gently. Dominic, I conceded, the name feeling strangely intimate on my tongue. I appreciate your concern, but you don't know anything about my situation. Michael Reeves, he said, the name falling like a stone into still water. Former boyfriend, Jamie's father. 3 years ago, he stole money from his employer, a pharmaceutical distribution company that serves as a front for the Vasquez cartel, and disappeared. They believe you know where he is, where the money is. The blood drained from my face. I gripped the edge of the sofa, suddenly lightheaded. How could he possibly know? I'd never told anyone the truth, not even Mrs. Abernathy or my few acquaintances at work. I'd constructed an entirely different story, that Michael had simply abandoned us, a sadly common tale that raised few questions. I don't, I whispered, the denial automatic after so many years. I don't know anything. Dominic leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, those pale blue eyes boring into mine. The men who came looking for you in Seattle weren't convinced, nor were the ones in Portland 3 months later. That's why you moved again, why you're here now, working under your mother's maiden name, living in a building without security cameras, paying cash whenever possible. My throat constricted. The walls seemed to close in around me, the luxurious office suddenly as confining as a cell. How do you know all this? A slight shrug lifted his shoulders. As I said, I have resources. He rose and moved to the windows, looking out over the glittering city. The Vasquez organization has been trying to expand into my territory for the past year. They're careless, brutal. They lack finesse. I said nothing, trying to process the implications of his words. Territory. His territory. The rumors about Dominic Castellano suddenly crystallized into certainty. You're not just a businessman, I said quietly. He turned, a faint smile playing at the corners of his mouth. I'm many things, Elise. A businessman is certainly one of them. You're like them, I continued, the truth dawning with terrifying clarity. The people Michael stole from, you're the same. Something hardened in his expression. I am nothing like them, he said, his voice dropping to a dangerous softness. The Vasquez cartel butchers innocents to send messages. They traffic children. They poison communities with impure products cut with lethal chemicals. He shook his head once, decisive. No, we are not the same. The distinction seemed academic to me. One criminal organization versus another. Different methods, perhaps, but the same fundamental disregard for law and morality. I should go, I said, rising on unsteady legs. Thank you for attending to my hand, and for the information. But I need to get home to my son. He made no move to stop me, watching with that unsettling intensity as I edged toward the door. The Vasquez cartel has traced you to Las Vegas, he said quietly. They have people at the airport, the bus station. They're methodically searching every hotel, restaurant, and casino in the city. I froze, my hand on the doorknob. How do you know that? I told you. I have resources. He moved closer, his steps silent on the plush carpet. It's only a matter of time before they find you, Elise. Days, at most. Terror clawed at my chest, making it difficult to breathe. After 3 years of running, of constantly looking over my shoulder, of waking in the night drenched in sweat from nightmares where Jamie was taken from me, To hear that they were close again was almost more than I could bear. "I'll leave tonight," I said, mind already racing through the meager options available to me. I had a small emergency fund hidden in my apartment, barely enough for bus tickets and a few days' expenses. We could go to Reno, or maybe Salt Lake City. Start over again. Another name, another dingy apartment, another job where I was invisible. "Running won't save you this time," Dominic said, now standing close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body. "They're better organized than before, more desperate. The man Michael stole from has lost standing within the organization. He needs to recover the money, or make an example of those he believes helped hide it." I looked up at him, searching his face for any sign of deception. "Why are you telling me this? What do you want?" His expression remained unreadable. "I told you. I can help you." "Why would you?" I pressed, suspicion overriding fear. "What's in it for you?" A flicker of something. Approval, perhaps, crossed his features. "Smart girl," he murmured. "Nothing in this world comes without a price, does it?" He reached out, slowly enough that I could have moved away if I chose, and brushed a strand of damp hair from my face. "Let's just say I have my reasons." His touch, brief as it was, sent an electric current through my skin. I stepped back, unsettled by my body's betrayal. "That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting tonight." He moved past me to open the door, revealing the same silent, suited man who had escorted me earlier. "Anthony will take you home. There will be someone watching your apartment tonight. For protection." "I don't want your protection," I said, even as part of me recognized the futility of refusing. Dominic's smile was cold and certain. "What you want and what you need are rarely the same thing, Elise. A lesson I learned long ago." He nodded to Anthony. "See Ms. Martinez safely home. Make sure she's not followed." I hesitated at the threshold, caught between fear of Dominic Castellano and the greater fear of what awaited me outside the shelter of his influence. "What happens tomorrow?" I asked. His gaze softened fractionally. "Tomorrow, we find a more permanent solution to your problem." He took my bandaged hand in his, turning it palm up to examine the dressing. "The cut should heal cleanly. Make sure to keep it dry." The sudden shift to mundane concern was jarring. I withdrew my hand from his grasp. "Thank you," I said stiffly, unable to shake the feeling that I had somehow entered into a bargain whose terms I didn't fully understand. Anthony led me through the labyrinthine back corridors of the casino to a service exit where a sleek black SUV with tinted windows waited, its engine running. The vehicle screamed money and power, exactly the kind of conspicuous transportation I had spent years avoiding. "Is this necessary?" I asked, as he opened the rear door for me. "I usually take the bus." "Mr. Castellano's instructions were clear," Anthony replied, his first complete sentence to me. His voice was surprisingly gentle for a man whose very presence exuded danger. The interior of the SUV was luxurious. Soft leather seats, the subtle scent of new car and expensive cologne, temperature perfectly regulated against the desert night's chill. The driver, another suited man whose broad shoulders strained the fabric of his jacket, didn't acknowledge me beyond a brief nod in the rearview mirror before pulling smoothly away from the curb. As we drove through the neon-lit streets of Las Vegas, I stared out the window, mind reeling. In the space of a single hour, my carefully constructed world had been upended. The danger I'd been running from for 3 years had found me again. But now there was a new complication. Dominic Castellano, with his penetrating eyes and unsettling knowledge of my life. Out of the frying pan, into the fire. The old idiom seemed particularly apt. We pulled up outside my apartment building, a shabby 3-story structure with peeling paint and security doors that had long since stopped locking properly. The contrast between the gleaming SUV and my humble residence couldn't have been more stark. "Wait," Anthony said, as I reached for the door handle. He scanned the street, eyes narrowed, before nodding to the driver. Only then did he exit the vehicle and open my door, standing like a shield between me and the quiet street. "This isn't necessary," I murmured, embarrassed by the attention we might attract. The last thing I needed was more curious neighbors. Anthony didn't respond, simply escorted me to the building's entrance, and waited while I fumbled with my keys. Only when I had the door open did he speak. "There will be someone outside all night," he said. "Don't be alarmed if you notice a car or two. They're with us." He handed me a small card with a single number printed on it. "If you need anything at all, call this number. It's a direct line. Someone will answer, regardless of the hour." I took the card reflexively, slipping it into my pocket. "Thank you," I said, unsure what else to offer. Anthony nodded once and returned to the SUV, leaving me to enter the building alone. I climbed the 2 flights of stairs to my apartment, each step heavier than the last as exhaustion and anxiety warred within me. "Mrs. Abernathy" answered my soft knock immediately, her kind face creased with concern. "You're home early, dear," she said, ushering me inside. "Is everything all right? You look pale." "I'm fine," I lied, summoning a smile that felt brittle even to me, "just not feeling well. They let me off early." She didn't look convinced but was too polite to press. "Jamie's been sleeping soundly, not a peep." She gathered her cardigan and purse. "Should I come by tomorrow as usual?" Tomorrow. What would tomorrow bring? Dominic had promised a permanent solution to my problems, whatever that might entail, but for now I needed normalcy, at least for Jamie's sake. "Yes, please," I said, same time. After seeing Mrs. Abernathy out, I locked the door and slid the chain into place, a flimsy barrier that would do little against anyone truly determined to enter, but provided the illusion of security. I checked the windows next, ensuring they were secure, before finally allowing myself to sink onto the worn sofa. The events of the evening played through my mind like a fever dream. Dominic Castellano, the revelation that he knew my secrets. The Vasquez cartel closing in. It was too much to process, too overwhelming to face. I pushed myself up and moved quietly to Jamie's room, needing the comfort of seeing him safe and peaceful. He slept as Mrs. Abernathy had said, one arm flung above his head, the other clutching his dinosaur. His dark lashes cast shadows on his cheeks, and his breathing came in soft, even puffs. My beautiful boy, the only good thing to come from my relationship with Michael. The only thing that mattered. I knelt beside his bed, gently brushing his hair, so like his father's, from his forehead. "I'll keep you safe," I whispered. "Whatever it takes." The words hung in the still air of the bedroom, a vow and a premonition. Whatever it takes, even if it meant accepting help from a man like Dominic Castellano. Even if the price of that help was something I couldn't afford to pay? I had no answers, only the bone-deep certainty that I would do anything, to protect my son. Exhausted beyond measure, I showered quickly, washing away the scent of industrial detergent and, absurdly, trying to erase the lingering sensation of Dominic's touch on my skin. As I changed into an oversized t-shirt and cotton shorts that served as pajamas, I caught sight of my reflection in the bathroom mirror. Pale face, shadows beneath my eyes, damp hair curling around my shoulders. I looked frightened, vulnerable. Exactly the kind of woman who would attract a predator like Dominic Castellano. Because that's what he was, beneath the expensive suit and cultured manner. A predator. A man who saw something he wanted and took it, regardless of laws or morality. The only question was, what did he want from me? I turned away from my reflection and its unanswerable questions. Sleep. I needed sleep. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, its own decisions. For tonight, at least, Jamie and I were safe. As I slipped beneath the thin blankets of my bed, I found myself listening for sounds outside my window. Cars passing, voices, anything that might signal danger. Instead, there was only the usual ambient noise of the city at night, and beneath that, an unusual silence where my anxiety should have been, the knowledge that someone was watching over us, even if that someone answered to Dominic Castellano, provided a strange comfort I hadn't felt in years. Just before sleep claimed me, my thoughts drifted to pale blue eyes and the touch of warm fingers against my skin. Dangerous thoughts, foolish thoughts. But in the darkness of my bedroom, with danger pressing in from all sides, I allowed myself the momentary weakness of remembering how it felt to be seen. Truly seen. For the first time in years. Morning came too soon, sunlight filtering through the thin curtains and painting stripes across my bed. For a blissful moment, I existed in the space between sleep and wakefulness, free from fear and memory. Then reality crashed back, Dominic Castellano, the Vasquez cartel, danger closing in from all sides. I sat up, pushing tangled hair from my face. The digital clock on my nightstand read 7:15. Jamie would be awake soon, hungry and full of 6-year-old energy. School day routine. Normal life. The juxtaposition of mundane morning rituals against the shadow of what had happened last night seemed absurd, almost laughable. The sound of movement in the kitchen jolted me fully awake. I froze, heart hammering against my ribs. Jamie was too short to reach the cupboards, and he knew better than to use the stove unsupervised. Someone was in our apartment. I slipped from bed, scanning the room for a weapon. The baseball bat I kept under the bed, a concession to living in a neighborhood where police response times averaged 20 minutes, felt reassuring in my grip as I crept toward the bedroom door. "Good morning, Ms. Martinez," called a female voice, unfamiliar but calm. "Please don't be alarmed. Mr. Castellano sent me." I hesitated, bat still raised. "Who are you? How did you get in?" "My name is Nina. I'm here to help with your son while you and Mr. Castellano handle your situation." As for how I got in, there was a pause, and I could almost hear the shrug in her voice. Locks aren't really an obstacle in my line of work. I lowered the bat slightly and peered around the doorframe. A woman stood in my kitchen, arranging what appeared to be fresh pastries on a plate. She was tall and athletically built, with dark hair pulled into a severe ponytail. Despite her casual clothing, jeans and a simple blouse, there was nothing casual about her watchful posture or the alert eyes that assessed me from across the room. "Mr. Castellano had no right to send anyone into my home," I said, clinging to indignation because it was preferable to fear. "Especially not around my son." Nina's expression remained neutral. "Your security concerns outweigh conventional etiquette, Mr. Castellano has information suggesting the Vasquez people have narrowed their search. This building is being watched, not just by us." She gestured to the plate of pastries. "I brought breakfast. There's coffee too. Mr. Castellano will be here at 9 to discuss your options." The matter-of-fact way she delivered this information, as though armed criminals watching my apartment and Mafia bosses scheduling morning meetings were perfectly normal, left me momentarily speechless. "Mommy?" Jamie's sleepy voice came from behind me. I turned to find him rubbing his eyes, dinosaur clutched to his chest. "I'm hungry," I forced a smile, quickly setting the bat aside. "Good morning, sunshine." I was just about to make breakfast. I threw a warning glance at Nina, silently pleading for discretion. She seemed to understand, her severe expression softening as she looked at Jamie. "You must be the famous Jamie," she said, her voice gentler than I would have expected. "I heard you like dinosaurs. That's a nice one you have there." Jamie regarded her suspiciously, edging closer to me. "Who are you?" "This is Nina," I explained, placing a protective hand on his shoulder. "She's a friend who stopped by for breakfast, with donuts," Nina added, lifting the plate slightly. "And chocolate milk if your mom says it's okay." Jamie's eyes widened, his natural caution warring with 6-year-old desire for forbidden treats. "Can I have chocolate milk, Mom, please?" The normalcy of the question, the ordinary mothering decision in the midst of extraordinary circumstances, nearly undid me. I swallowed hard against the lump in my throat. "Just this once," I agreed. "Why don't you go wash up first?" Once Jamie had scampered off to the bathroom, I turned back to Nina. "I don't know what Dominic told you, but I don't need a babysitter, for me or my son." Nina met my gaze evenly. "2 men have been watching this building since 4 a.m. They match the description of known Vasquez associates. A third joined them about an hour ago. So no, Ms. Martinez, you don't need a babysitter. You need protection." She poured coffee into a chipped mug and held it out to me. "Cream? Sugar?" I took the mug mechanically, my hands suddenly unsteady. "Black is fine," I murmured, trying to process this new information. They had found me already. They were outside, watching, waiting. "Mr. Castellano has a plan," Nina continued, her voice low as Jamie's footsteps pattered back toward us. "But you need to be ready to move quickly. Pack only essentials. 1 small bag each." "Move?" I echoed. "Move where?" Nina's eyes flicked to Jamie as he re-entered the room, and she smoothly transitioned to a smile. "Those are some awesome pajamas," she told him, setting a glass of chocolate milk on the table. Batman is my favorite too. While Jamie happily dug into a chocolate-filled pastry, heedless of the tension simmering in the room, Nina handed me a small envelope. Inside was a note written in elegant, masculine script. Be ready at 9. Bring only what you can carry. Everything else can be replaced. Everything except you and the boy, D. I folded the note and slipped it into my pocket, mind racing. Leave? Today, with Dominic Castellano? The idea seemed ludicrous, dangerous in ways I couldn't even fully articulate. And yet, what choice did I have? The Vasquez cartel had found me, again. And this time, they were closer than ever. I need to get Jamie ready for school, I said, more to myself than to Nina. She shook her head once, decisive. No school today. It's not safe. Jamie looked up, face smeared with chocolate. No school? His expression brightened with the universal joy of unexpected freedom. Can we go to the park instead? Not today, buddy, I said, forcing a light tone. We're going on a little trip, like a vacation? He asked, excitement building. I nodded, not trusting my voice for more. A vacation, or an escape, or possibly walking straight from one danger into another. The next hour passed in a blur of activity. I helped Jamie dress, and then packed his favorite toys, a few changes of clothes, and his beloved dinosaur into his Batman backpack. My own packing was equally sparse. Practical clothing, toiletries, the emergency cash from its hiding place behind the loose baseboard in my closet. The envelope contained just over $2,000, all that remained of my last 3 paychecks, saved penny by penny for exactly this kind of emergency. Not enough to start over again, not really. Not with the Vasquez cartel so close. At precisely 8:45, Nina's phone chimed with a message. She checked it and nodded to me. Time to go, she said, all business now. Stay close to me. Don't stop for anything. Where are we? I began. But she cut me off with a sharp gesture. No questions. Not now. She crouched to Jamie's level, her expression serious but kind. Jamie, we're going to play a game, okay? It's called Secret Agents. We need to be very quiet and do exactly as I say. Can you do that? Jamie nodded solemnly, thrilled to be included in adult matters. I can be quiet, he whispered, already playing his part. Nina led us not to the front door, but to the fire escape outside my bedroom window, this way, she said, sliding the window open with practiced ease, quickly now. I hesitated, struck by the finality of the moment. 3 years in this tiny apartment, it wasn't much. The pipes groaned, the heating was unreliable, and the neighbors sometimes fought loudly at 3 a.m, but it had been our refuge, our home. Ms. Martinez, Nina prompted, her tone gentle but urgent. We need to go. I nodded, helping Jamie through the window first, then following with our 2 small bags. The metal of the fire escape was already warm in the morning sun as we descended, moving as quietly as possible. At the bottom, instead of dropping to the alley below, Nina guided us through a service door into the adjacent building. We navigated a maze of corridors, emerging finally into what appeared to be an underground parking garage. A black SUV identical to the one from last night idled near the exit, engine running. The rear door opened as we approached, and I found myself looking into those now familiar pale blue eyes. Dominic Castellano sat in the back seat, impeccably dressed in another bespoke suit, this one navy blue. He extended a hand to Jamie. You must be the dinosaur expert I've heard about, he said, his deep voice warm with genuine interest. I'm Dominic. Your mother and I are friends. Jamie glanced at me, seeking permission. At my nod, he took Dominic's hand with surprising confidence. I'm Jamie. I know all about the Jurassic period. That's when the biggest dinosaurs lived. Is that so? Dominic replied, helping him into the vehicle. Perhaps you can teach me about them during our trip. I climbed in after Jamie, hyper-aware of Dominic's proximity as I settled onto the leather seat. Nina closed the door behind us and moved to the front passenger seat, exchanging quiet words with the driver. Anthony, I realized, recognizing his broad shoulders and closely cropped hair. The men watching your apartment? Dominic asked Nina. Dealt with, she replied cryptically. They won't be reporting back anytime soon. I glanced sharply at her, then at Dominic. What does that mean? Did you... I stopped, aware of Jamie's curious ears beside me. Dominic's expression revealed nothing. It means we have some time before the Vasquez organization realizes they've lost track of you. Again. He turned his attention to Jamie, who was watching the exchange with undisguised interest. I hear you like Batman. I always preferred Superman myself. Just like that, he redirected the conversation, engaging Jamie in an animated debate about superheroes that lasted as we pulled smoothly away from the curb and merged into morning traffic. I watched my son, normally shy with strangers, chatting comfortably with one of the most dangerous men in Las Vegas, and felt reality slipping further away with each passing minute. Where are we going? I asked, when there was a lull in their conversation. Dominic glanced at me, something unreadable flickering in his eyes. Somewhere safe. A property of mine outside the city. For how long? As long as necessary. The vagueness of his answer heightened my anxiety. I have work tonight. I can't just disappear. A faint smile curved his lips. Your employment at the casino has been terminated. With a generous severance package, of course. You can't just... I began, then stopped, recognizing the futility of the protest. Of course he could. He owned the casino. He apparently owned much more than that. Your financial concerns are being addressed, Elise, he said quietly, his tone suggesting the matter was closed. For now, focus on keeping yourself and Jamie safe. The use of my son's name sent a chill through me. The casual familiarity, the easy way he had insinuated himself into our lives in the span of less than 12 hours. It was calculated, I was certain. Everything about Dominic Castellano was calculated. The city gave way to desert landscape, endless stretches of sand and scrub, punctuated by distant mountains. Jamie pressed his face to the window, entranced by the passing scenery, while I tried to quell the growing sense of having surrendered control of my life entirely. After about 40 minutes of driving, we turned onto a private road that wound through increasing vegetation. Palm trees appeared, then flowering bushes, creating the illusion of an oasis rising from the barren landscape. Finally, we passed through an ornate gate with armed guards and up a curved driveway to a sprawling estate set against the backdrop of a natural rock formation. Wow, Jamie breathed, eyes wide. Is this a castle? Dominic chuckled, the sound surprisingly warm. Not quite. Just a house. Just a house. The understatement was almost comical. The structure before us was a masterpiece of modern architecture. Glass and stone merging seamlessly with the natural landscape, multiple levels cascading down the hillside. A glimpse of blue suggesting a pool somewhere beyond. As the SUV came to a stop in the circular drive, a staff member appeared to open the door. Dominic exited first, then turned to help Jamie down. I followed, legs stiff from tension more than the drive. Welcome to Las Sombras, Dominic said, his hand coming to rest lightly at the small of my back as he guided us toward the entrance. The touch was proprietary, intimate in a way that should have offended me, but instead sent a confusing shiver up my spine. The interior of the house was as impressive as its exterior. Soaring ceilings, museum-quality art, furnishings that managed to be both luxurious and comfortable. A wall of windows offered a panoramic view of the desert valley below. The city a distant shimmer on the horizon. Maria will show you to your rooms, Dominic said, gesturing to a middle-aged woman with a kind face who had appeared silently at his side. I've taken the liberty of having some appropriate clothing and necessities provided, but if there's anything specific you need, please don't hesitate to ask. Can I have a dinosaur book? Jamie piped up, apparently deciding that this strange man who lived in a palace might be able to grant wishes. Dominic smiled, a genuine expression that transformed his severe features. I believe that can be arranged. In fact, I may have something even better. He looked to Maria. Please show Jamie the library after he's settled. I think he'll find the natural history collection particularly interesting. As Maria led an excited Jamie toward what appeared to be the east wing of the house, Dominic turned his attention fully to me. The warmth he had shown my son vanished, replaced by that penetrating intensity that made me feel stripped bare. We need to talk, he said simply, My study. 1 hour. He glanced at his watch. A subtle dismissal. I'll leave you to get settled. Before I could respond, he turned and strode away, leaving me alone in the vast entryway, a prisoner in a gilded cage I hadn't agreed to enter. I followed Maria through corridors adorned with artwork that probably cost more than I'd earn in several lifetimes. The house was a study in tasteful opulence. Nothing gaudy or ostentatious, yet every detail spoke of wealth and power. The kind of place that made you acutely aware of your own shabby clothes and calloused hands. Here we are, Maria said, stopping before a door of rich, dark wood. Mr. Castellano thought you might prefer to be near your son. She opened the door to reveal a suite that was larger than my entire apartment. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating a sitting area with elegant furniture arranged around a fireplace. Beyond that, I glimpsed a bedroom with a king-sized bed draped in crisp white linens. The entire space was decorated in soothing shades of cream and pale blue, the latter an unsettling echo of Dominic's eyes. Your son's room connects through here, Maria continued, moving to a door on the right. She opened it to show a smaller bedroom, already set up with toys and books that would delight any child. Jamie was bouncing on the bed, his earlier wariness completely forgotten. Mom, look at these dinosaurs, he exclaimed, pointing to a collection of detailed models arranged on a shelf. And there are books, and a TV. His joy was infectious, momentarily cutting through my anxiety. At least he wasn't frightened. To him, this was just an exciting adventure, a vacation in a fancy house with new toys. The innocence of his perspective made my chest ache. It's wonderful, sweetheart, I managed, forcing a smile. But remember what we said about jumping on beds that aren't ours? He stopped immediately, looking sheepish. Sorry. Maria smiled kindly. It's quite all right. The bed is sturdy. She turned to me. The bathroom is through there, she said, pointing to another door. Fresh clothes are in the closets. Mr. Castellano instructed me to tell you that everything here is for your use. If you need anything at all, just pick up the house phone and dial 0. She moved toward the exit, then paused. Lunch will be served in the family dining room at noon, but I can bring something here if you prefer. Her eyes held a hint of sympathy, as though she understood my discomfort. Thank you, I said, but I think we'll come down. Jamie would probably enjoy exploring. After Maria left, I sank onto the edge of the bed, suddenly exhausted despite the early hour. The events of the past 12 hours felt surreal, like a dream I couldn't quite wake from. 24 hours ago, I'd been washing dishes in the casino kitchen, invisible and safe in my anonymity. Now I was in the home of a man who was, by his own admission, a criminal. A man who had orchestrated my rescue with military precision, who had inserted himself into my life with calculated determination. A man who wanted something from me, though what that might be remained unclear. I glanced at my watch. 45 minutes until my meeting with Dominic. Time to freshen up and gather my thoughts. I needed clarity, needed to understand exactly what I'd gotten myself and Jamie into. The bathroom was a marvel of marble and glass, with a shower large enough for 4 people and a soaking tub positioned to take advantage of the desert view. The vanity held an array of expensive toiletries, all new, all clearly purchased with a woman in mind. The level of preparation was both impressive and disturbing. How long had Dominic been planning this? How long had he been watching me? I showered quickly, the hot water washing away the lingering scent of industrial detergent from the night before. Wrapped in a plush robe I found hanging on the door, I ventured into the walk-in closet and stopped short. Rows of clothing hung neatly, all in my size, casual wear, dresses, even nightwear. Shoes lined the bottom shelves, again in my exact size, the intimacy of it. The knowledge that Dominic had learned such personal details about me sent a chill down my spine. I selected a simple sundress and sandals, avoiding the more revealing options. As I dressed, I caught sight of my reflection in the full-length mirror. The woman looking back at me was a stranger. Clean, well-dressed, standing in luxurious surroundings. But her eyes held the same fear, the same wariness that had been my constant companion for 3 years. After checking on Jamie, who was contentedly arranging dinosaur figures on the floor of his room under Maria's watchful eye, I made my way back through the house. I had been so distracted earlier that I hadn't paid attention to the route. But something, instinct, perhaps, or simply the pull of inevitability, led me to a heavy door that I somehow knew belonged to Dominic's study. I knocked once, a surprisingly assertive sound in the quiet hallway. "Enter," came his voice, that deep timbre that seemed to resonate in my bones. Dominic sat behind a massive desk, focused on something on the computer screen before him. He looked up as I entered, and something flickered in his expression, appreciation perhaps, or satisfaction at seeing me in clothes he had chosen. He rose in a fluid movement, buttoning his suit jacket in a gesture that spoke of ingrained manners. "Elise," he said, my name soft on his tongue. "Please, sit." He gestured to a seating area near the windows, where a tea service had been arranged on a low table. I took a seat on one of the leather armchairs, perching on the edge rather than allowing myself to sink into its comfort. "I want to know what's happening," I said, determined to maintain whatever small control I could. "All of it. Why you brought us here. What you want from me. How you know so much about the Vasquez cartel and Michael." Dominic poured tea into delicate china cups, his movements precise. "Direct questions. I appreciate that." He handed me a cup, his fingers brushing mine briefly. "Sugar?" I shook my head, impatient with the social niceties. He settled into the chair opposite mine, regarding me over the rim of his cup. "The simplest answer is that I'm protecting an investment." "An investment," I repeated flatly. "Is that what I am to you?" A faint smile touched his lips. "Not you specifically, no. Las Vegas. My territory. My businesses." He set his cup down. "The Vasquez cartel has been trying to establish a foothold here for the past year. I've been discouraging their efforts." His tone made it clear that this discouragement had not been gentle. "What does that have to do with me and my son?" "Their pursuit of you has brought key players into my territory, men I've been wanting to identify." He leaned forward slightly. "You're the bait in a trap, Elise. A trap I've been carefully setting for months." The blunt admission sent ice through my veins. "You've been using me," I whispered. "Using my fear, my son's safety. I've been protecting you," he corrected, his tone hardening. "If I wanted to simply use you as bait, I could have left you in that apartment and waited for them to find you, then eliminated them when they did." His eyes held mine. "Instead, I brought you here. Safe. Protected. For now," I said. "But what happens after your trap is sprung? What happens to Jamie and me then?" Dominic was silent for a moment, studying me with that unsettling intensity. "That depends," he finally said, "on what you choose." "What I choose," I laughed, the sound hollow even to my own ears. "What choice do I have? I'm here, in your house, dependent on your protection. That's not exactly a position of freedom." "You're more free than you've been in 3 years," he countered. "Free from constantly looking over your shoulder. Free from working your fingers to the bone for minimum wage. Free from living in fear." The accuracy of his assessment stung. "Only because I've traded one captor for another." Something dangerous flashed in his eyes. "I am not your captor, Elise. I'm offering you a solution. A permanent one." "What kind of solution?" I asked, wary of the shift in his demeanor. Dominic rose and moved to the window, looking out over the desert landscape. "The Vasquez organization believes you know where Michael hid the money he stole. $5 million. He turned back to me. "Do you?" The question I had been asked countless times by countless threats. The question I had always denied knowing the answer to. "No," I said, the familiar lie rolling off my tongue. Dominic's expression didn't change. "I don't believe you." Fear spiked through me. "It's the truth. Michael never told me anything. He just disappeared. Left me to deal with the consequences." Dominic returned to his chair, movements languid but with that underlying tension that reminded me of a predator restraining itself. "The night before he disappeared, Michael transferred $20,000 into an account in your name, an account you emptied the same day he vanished. His gaze was relentless. You knew he was planning to run. You helped him." My heart hammered against my ribs. How could he possibly know about that account? I had closed it years ago, withdrawn the money in cash. Used it to flee with Jamie when the Vasquez men first came looking. I didn't know what he'd done, I said, clinging to the partial truth. He told me he'd gotten a bonus, that we were going to take a trip. I swallowed hard. The next morning he was gone. No note, no explanation. Then those men came asking about money, about Michael. I took Jamie and ran. Dominic studied me for what felt like an eternity, his expression unreadable. "Let's assume, for the moment, that I believe you," he finally said, though his tone suggested he didn't. "The fact remains that the Vasquez cartel believes otherwise. They will never stop hunting you, Elise, not until they recover their money or extract what they believe is appropriate vengeance." I closed my eyes briefly, the weight of that truth settling on my shoulders like a physical burden. "So what's your solution? Keep us prisoner here forever?" "Not a prison," he said softly. "A sanctuary, protection, for as long as you need it." He leaned forward, those pale eyes capturing mine, "in exchange for your loyalty." "My loyalty," I repeated, the word heavy with implication. "What exactly does that entail?" The smile that curved his lips then was predatory, possessive. "You're an intelligent woman, Elise. I think you understand perfectly what I'm offering." And I did. Protection. Security. A life of luxury for myself and my son. All in exchange for becoming Dominic Castellanos. What? Mistress? Property? And if I refuse? I asked, voice barely above a whisper. "I would never force you to stay," he said, and I almost believed him. "But I wouldn't recommend leaving either. Not with the Vasquez cartel still hunting you." A gilded cage was still a cage, no matter how he dressed it up in talk of choices and sanctuary. "I need time," I said, rising from my chair. "To think. To understand what this means for Jamie and me." Dominic nodded, unexpectedly acquiescent. "Of course. Take all the time you need." He rose as well, once again closing the distance between us with those fluid, predatory movements. "But understand this, Elise. I protect what's mine, and from the moment I saw you through that glass, watching you work in my kitchen with those delicate hands and defiant eyes, I decided you would be mine, and the possessive declaration should have terrified me. Instead, it sent a confusing warmth through my body, a treacherous flutter beneath my ribs. I took a step back, needing distance from his overwhelming presence. "I'm not yours," I said, finding a shred of defiance. "I don't belong to anyone." His smile deepened, as though my resistance pleased him. "Not yet," he agreed. "But you will be. We both know it's only a matter of time." The certainty in his voice, the absolute confidence, left me speechless. I turned and fled, not caring how it looked or what it revealed about my state of mind. I needed air, space, distance from the man who seemed able to see through every defense I'd built. As I hurried down the corridor, his words echoed in my mind. Only a matter of time. The most frightening part wasn't his arrogance or his power. It was that, deep down, I feared he might be right. The days at Las Sombras blended into a strange, dreamlike routine. Jamie thrived in the spacious environment, delighting in the pool, the extensive library, and the attention lavished on him by Maria and the other staff. He asked about returning to school only once, easily satisfied by my vague explanation about an extended vacation. I, however, lived in a constant state of tension, waiting for the other shoe to drop. Dominic was often absent during the day, attending to his various businesses in the city. But evenings belonged to him, dinners where he engaged Jamie in conversations about dinosaurs and superheroes, followed by quiet moments on the terrace after Jamie went to bed, where Dominic and I circled each other with words that meant everything and nothing. He never pushed, never rushed, never attempted to force the issue of my loyalty. Instead, he simply existed in my orbit, a gravitational force gradually pulling me closer despite my resistance. A week passed. Then two. The opulent surroundings began to feel less foreign, the staff less intimidating. I found myself helping in the kitchen sometimes, unable to remain idle while others worked. Maria initially protested, but eventually accepted my need for normalcy, for purpose. It was during one of these kitchen sessions, kneading bread dough alongside Maria, that Dominic found me. I need to speak with you, he said, his tone serious in a way that sent ice down my spine. In my study. I wiped flour from my hands, exchanging a worried glance with Maria, who nodded encouragingly. Jamie is with Antonio in the garden, she assured me. Go. Dominic said nothing as I followed him through the house, his posture tense, the silence heavy between us. In his study, he closed the door with deliberate care and turned to face me. The Vasquez men found your old apartment yesterday, he said without preamble. They tore it apart looking for clues to your whereabouts. My stomach clenched. Did anyone get hurt? Mrs. Abernathy is fine, he assured me. They waited until the building was empty, but they left. A message. His jaw tightened. For you. And for anyone helping you. I sank into the nearest chair, legs suddenly unable to support me. What kind of message? The kind meant to terrify, he said, his voice hard. They're growing desperate. The cartel leader's patience is wearing thin. I closed my eyes, guilt and fear warring within me. Mrs. Abernathy, my neighbors, the other tenants, all at risk because of me, because of Michael's actions and my subsequent flight. There's more. Dominic continued, moving to stand before me. They've identified Jamie's school. They've been watching it, gathering information. My eyes flew open, panic surging like a tidal wave. Jamie is safe, he interrupted, his hands coming to rest on my shoulders, steadying me. Here, with us. They don't know where you are, Elise, but they're getting closer. Their search has narrowed to properties in the desert. It won't be long before they connect me to your disappearance. What happens then? I whispered, looking up at him. His expression softened, fingers moving to brush a strand of hair from my face. Then I eliminate the threat, permanently. The casual way he spoke of violence should have horrified me. Instead, I felt a perverse relief. You would kill for us? Without hesitation, he replied, his eyes never leaving mine. But there's another way. A better way. He knelt before me, bringing us to eye level. Tell me where the money is, Elise. Give me the leverage I need to negotiate with the Vasquez cartel. The plea caught me off guard. After 3 years of denying, of running, of pretending ignorance, to finally hear someone ask so directly, with no threats or violence, just a simple request. I can't, I whispered, tears welling in my eyes. I promised. Michael? Dominic's voice hardened. You're still protecting the man who abandoned you? Who left you to face the consequences of his actions alone? I shook my head, a tear spilling down my cheek. Not Michael. Myself. I promised myself I would never let anyone use that money. It's blood money. Tainted. I drew a shaky breath. People died because of it. I couldn't live with myself if I spent a single dollar. Understanding dawned in his eyes. You know where it is. You've always known. I nodded, the admission like a weight lifting from my chest. Michael told me the night before he disappeared. He was drunk, bragging about how clever he'd been, how he'd hidden it where no one would think to look. Another tear fell. The next morning he was gone. I don't know if he was killed or if he just ran, left us behind as a diversion. Dominic's hands tightened on my shoulders. Where, Elise? Where did he hide it? The question hung between us, the final barrier, the last secret. If I tell you, I said slowly, what happens then? To Jamie and me? His gaze softened, one hand moving to cup my cheek. Whatever you want to happen. Stay, go. Your choice, freely made. I searched his face for deception, and found none. Only that intense focus, that unwavering attention that had unnerved me from the beginning. You would let us go? Just like that? No, he admitted, brutally honest. I don't want to let you go. I want you here, with me. Both of you. His thumb traced my lower lip, the touch electric. But I won't keep you against your will. That's not what I want. What do you want? I asked, my voice barely audible. His eyes darkened. Everything, Elise, every part of you. Freely given. The raw desire in his voice sent heat pooling low in my abdomen. 3 years of fear and running, of denying myself any human connection beyond my son. 3 years of loneliness, and now this man, dangerous, powerful, undeniably compelling, offering sanctuary, security, passion. The Trenton National Cemetery, I whispered, the words escaping before I could reconsider. Michael's grandfather's grave. He hollowed out the headstone and sealed the money inside a waterproof container. A bitter laugh escaped me. He thought it was poetic. Money buried with the dead stays buried. That's what he said. Dominic stared at me for a long moment, surprise evident in his expression. Of all the places, he shook his head slightly, desecrating his own family's grave. The man had no honor. No, I agreed softly. He didn't. Dominic rose in a fluid movement, reaching for his phone. Anthony, he said after a moment, I need a team ready. We're going to Trenton. His eyes never left mine as he gave detailed instructions, his free hand still cupping my face, thumb gently wiping away the tears that continued to fall. When he ended the call, he pulled me to my feet and into his arms. I went willingly, the last of my resistance crumbling as his warmth enveloped me. You've carried this alone for too long, he murmured into my hair. No more, Elise. You're not alone anymore. I allowed myself to lean into him, to draw strength from his solid presence. What happens now? He pulled back slightly to meet my gaze. I retrieve the money. I arrange a meeting with the Vasquez leadership. I return their money, with interest, on the condition that they leave Las Vegas. And you, alone, permanently. It sounded so simple, laid out in those confident terms. Will they agree? A cold smile curved his lips. They'll have little choice. 5 million isn't worth a war, especially when I make it clear what such a war would cost them. I believed him. In the weeks I'd spent in his home, I'd glimpsed the extent of his power, the loyalty he commanded, the resources at his disposal. Dominic Castellano was not a man to be crossed lightly. You're leaving, I said, suddenly realizing the implication of his phone call. When? Within the hour, he replied. The sooner this is resolved, the better. Fear clutched at my heart, not for myself this time, but for him. Is it dangerous? Something warm flickered in his eyes. Concerned for my safety, Elise? I looked away, unwilling to acknowledge how much the thought of him in danger affected me. Jamie would miss you, I said instead. His fingers gently turned my face back to his. Only Jamie? The question hung between us, demanding truth. No, I whispered. Not only Jamie. The admission changed something between us. A tangible shift in the atmosphere. Dominic's gaze dropped to my lips, his intent clear. I had a heartbeat to decide, to pull away, or to surrender to the connection that had been building since that first moment through the glass partition. I chose surrender. His lips met mine with unexpected gentleness, a contrast to the barely restrained power I always sensed in him. My hands found their way to his chest, feeling the steady, strong beat of his heart beneath expensive fabric. The kiss deepened, his arm tightening around my waist, drawing me flush against him. It was freedom and captivity at once. The cage I had feared transformed into a sanctuary I never wanted to leave. When we finally parted, both breathing heavily, his forehead rested against mine. When I return, he said, voice rough with emotion, we'll talk about the future, your future, our future if you'll consider it. I will, I promised, surprising myself with how much I meant it. He kissed me once more, briefly but with an intensity that left me dizzy, then stepped back. Stay with Jamie. Don't leave the property for any reason. Nina and the security team will remain on high alert until I return. I nodded, suddenly reluctant to see him go. How long will you be gone? 3 days. 4 at most. His hand caressed my cheek one final time. Wait for me, Elise. It wasn't a command, but a request. Perhaps the first true choice he had offered me. I will, I said again. The words a promise, a commitment, a step toward a future I had never dared to imagine. The next 3 days passed in a haze of anticipation and fear. I threw myself into activities with Jamie, grateful for his uncomplicated joy in swimming, reading, and exploring the grounds under Nina's watchful eye. At night, I stood on the terrace, looking out over the desert, wondering where Dominic was, if he was safe. if he would return as promised. On the fourth day, as the sun began its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, a helicopter appeared in the distance. Jamie, playing nearby, looked up with excitement. "Is that Mr. Dominic?" he asked, shielding his eyes against the glare. "I think it might be," I replied, heart quickening. We watched as the helicopter landed on the pad at the far end of the property. Minutes later, a familiar figure emerged, striding toward the house with that predatory grace I had come to recognize from any distance. Jamie waved enthusiastically, and to my surprise, Dominic returned the gesture, a genuine smile warming his typically austere features. "Mom?" Jamie said, tugging at my hand. "Can we stay here? With Mr. Dominic? I like it here." The innocent question brought tears to my eyes. "Would you like that, sweetheart?" He nodded emphatically. "He knows all about dinosaurs, and he said he'd teach me to swim better. And Maria makes the best cookies." I laughed, a free, unburdened sound I hadn't heard from myself in years. "Those are all excellent reasons." Dominic reached us, his eyes finding mine immediately, a question in their pale depths. I smiled, extending my free hand, the one not clasped in Jamie's, toward him. He took it, his warm fingers entwining with mine. "Welcome home," I said softly. The words lingered in the desert air, a promise, a new beginning. The fear that had been my constant companion for 3 long years began to dissolve, replaced by something warm and hopeful. Not safety exactly. Life with Dominic Castellano would never be entirely safe. But protection. Belonging. Perhaps in time. Love. He raised our joined hands to his lips, pressing a kiss to my knuckles. "It's done," he said simply. "The Vasquez cartel has agreed to my terms. You're free, Elise. Truly free, for the first time in years. Free." The word echoed in my mind as I looked from Dominic to Jamie, who was bouncing excitedly beside me, eager to share his latest dinosaur discoveries. "We have a lot to talk about," I said, suddenly shy despite everything we'd shared. Dominic's smile deepened, a promise in his eyes that sent heat coursing through me. "We have all the time in the world," he assured me, his thumb tracing circles on my palm. All the time in the world. And for the first time in 3 years, I believed in tomorrow. The rain fell in sheets, each drop a tiny needle against my exposed skin. I clutched Jamie tighter to my chest, my jacket draped over his tiny body rather than my own. His whimpers had subsided to occasional hiccups as he nestled against the only warmth I could offer. The bus shelter provided minimal protection from the November downpour, its metal bench cold and unforgiving beneath me. "Shh, baby, it's okay. Mommy's got you," I whispered, pressing my lips to his damp forehead. But it wasn't okay. Nothing had been okay since Mike cleaned out our apartment and bank account 3 weeks ago, leaving nothing but a hastily scrawled note on our kitchen counter. "Sorry, Ellie. Can't do this anymore. Can't do this anymore." As if our son, our 6-month-old baby, was some kind of temporary commitment he could simply walk away from. As if I was disposable. The eviction notice had come yesterday. Final warning. My waitressing job barely covered formula and diapers, let alone our overdue rent. The landlord's patience had run out, along with my options. I'd spent the day trudging between social services offices, my sneakers soaked through, Jamie fussing in his carrier. Each place offered sympathy, but little immediate help. Waiting lists, forms, procedures, nothing for tonight, when we would officially have nowhere to go. A sleek black car slowed near the curb, its wipers working furiously against the deluge. I ducked my head, pulling Jamie closer. Late-model Mercedes with tinted windows. Probably some businessman lost in this neighborhood, which wasn't known for its luxury vehicles or safety after dark. I expected it to move on, but it didn't. Instead, it stopped directly in front of the bus shelter, engine purring quietly. The rear window lowered with an electric hum. "You shouldn't be out in this weather," a voice said, deep and smooth like expensive whiskey, especially not with a child. I kept my eyes down, heart hammering. Strange men offering help rarely wanted nothing in return. "The bus will be here soon," I lied, knowing the last one had passed over an hour ago. No, it won't. Not for another 7 hours. Something in his certainty made me look up. The interior light was off, casting the car's occupant in shadow, but I could make out the silhouette of broad shoulders and the glint of a watch that probably cost more than 6 months of my rent. I'm fine, I said automatically, the words hollow even to my own ears. Jamie chose that moment to let out a plaintive wail, as if calling my bluff. You're soaked through, shivering, and your child is crying. His observation wasn't accusatory, just matter of fact. My car is warm. I bristled at his presumption. I don't get into cars with strangers. The window lowered further, and he leaned forward slightly. The amber glow of a distant streetlight caught his features. Sharp jawline, dark eyes that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, hair the color of wet asphalt. He was younger than I'd expected, perhaps early 30s, and devastatingly handsome in a way that felt dangerous rather than comforting. Daniel Castellano, he said, as if the name should mean something to me. When I didn't react, a flicker of something like amusement crossed his face. Now I'm not a stranger. Jamie's cries grew more insistent. I bounced him gently, murmuring soothing nonsense while trying to project more confidence than I felt. That's not how it works, Mr. Castellano. Daniel studied me for a long moment before speaking again. The nearest shelter is 20 blocks from here. It's already at capacity because of the storm. He said this with absolute certainty, as if he'd personally verified this information. The temperature is dropping. Your options are limited. A chill that had nothing to do with my wet clothes crawled up my spine. How did he know I was looking for a shelter? Was I that transparent, that pathetic? I can offer you and your child a warm meal and a safe place for the night. Nothing more, nothing less. He reached into his suit jacket and produced a business card, extending it through the window. Call whoever you need to. Give them my information. Tell them where you're going. I hesitated before taking the card, careful not to let our fingers touch. Heavy cream-colored stock, embossed black lettering. Daniel Castellano, Castellano Investments. A phone number with an area code I recognized as belonging to the wealthy downtown district. Why would you help us? I asked, suspicion edging my voice. Something shifted in his expression. A softening around the eyes, perhaps, or a slight downturn of his mouth. I was once a child in the rain with nowhere to go, he said quietly. No one stopped for us. Before I could respond, Jamie sneezed, his little body shuddering against mine. The maternal panic was immediate. Pneumonia, fever, hospitals I couldn't afford. I pulled him closer, as if my body heat alone could protect him from illness. My driver can take you wherever you wish to go, Daniel added, noticing my hesitation. The shelter, a friend's home, a hotel of your choosing. I won't be in the car. I blinked in surprise. You'd send your car without you? If that would make you more comfortable. He nodded to the front seat, where I now noticed a broad-shouldered man at the wheel. Marco is discreet and trustworthy. The offer was tempting in a way that made my skin prickle with shame. I had $43 to my name, no roof for the night, and a baby who deserved better than a mother too proud to accept help. One meal, I said finally, my voice barely audible over the rain, and maybe a place to get him warm and dry. I nodded toward Jamie, whose eyelids were growing heavy despite his discomfort. Daniel's face remained impassive, but something like satisfaction flickered in his eyes. The car door swung open, held by an unseen hand from inside. I hesitated at the edge of the shelter. One last moment of uncertainty. I don't make offers twice, Eleanor, he said softly. The use of my full name, not Ellie, which everyone called me, sent a jolt through my system. I hadn't introduced myself. I opened my mouth to ask how he knew, but Jamie sneezed again. A tiny, pitiful sound that made my decision for me. I darted through the rain and slid into the car, cradling Jamie against me. The door closed with a soft, expensive-sounding thunk, sealing us inside. The interior smelled of leather and something woodsy. Sandalwood, perhaps. Heat enveloped us immediately, and I had to fight the urge to groan with relief. Daniel sat across from me, a respectful distance maintained. Up close, I could see that his suit was custom-made, his shoes Italian leather, his watch a Patek Philippe that even I recognized as costing more than a house, old money written in every line of him. "Marco, Westlake Drive," he instructed, pressing a button to raise the privacy partition. He turned back to me, those dark eyes assessing. "You're afraid?" It wasn't a question. I adjusted Jamie in my arms, buying time. "I'm cautious. There's a difference." "Not much of one from where I'm sitting." He glanced at Jamie, who had already begun to doze in the warmth of the car. "How old?" 6 months, I answered automatically. Daniel nodded, as if confirming information he already knew. "And his father?" The question hit like a slap. "Not in the picture," I said tersely. "His loss," Daniel replied, his gaze lingering on Jamie's sleeping face before returning to mine. Something in that look made my breath catch. Not pity, which I'd grown accustomed to, but a cold anger that seemed to exist independently of me. The car moved smoothly through rain-slicked streets, the expensive suspension absorbing every bump and pothole. We turned onto increasingly exclusive avenues, the buildings growing more imposing with each block. "Where exactly are we going?" I asked, a new thread of anxiety weaving through me. "My home," Daniel said simply. "It's secure, private, and has everything needed for your child's comfort." Alarm bells rang in my head. You thought we were going to a restaurant?" A smile touched his lips, but didn't reach his eyes. "You're soaking wet, as is your son. You need dry clothes, a hot shower, and privacy. A public venue offers none of those things." He was right, of course, but that didn't quell the fear bubbling in my chest. I clutched Jamie tighter, and something in my expression must have betrayed my thoughts. "Eleanor," Daniel said, his voice softening. "At any point, if you wish to leave, Marco will take you wherever you want to go." No questions asked. I studied his face, searching for deceit, and finding none. Still, men like him, wealthy, powerful, used to getting what they wanted, were experts at hiding their true intentions. "Why are you doing this?" He was quiet for so long I thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice had a different quality to it. Rougher, less polished. "Because some debts can never be repaid directly. They must be paid forward." The car slowed, turning through wrought iron gates that opened silently at our approach. A massive house loomed before us, its stone facade illuminated by tasteful landscape lighting despite the downpour. Not just a house, a fortress disguised as a mansion. As we rolled to a stop under a covered portico, I noticed the discreet security cameras tracking our arrival and the 2 men standing at attention despite the late hour and terrible weather. "Welcome to my home," Daniel said, as Marco opened the door, holding an umbrella ready. "Let's get you and your son inside." I stepped out, clutching Jamie to my chest, a strange sense of crossing a threshold I couldn't return from settling over me. Daniel emerged behind me, his hand hovering near the small of my back without quite touching me, guiding, claiming. As we approached the imposing front door, I should have been more afraid than I was. I should have insisted Marco take us to a shelter. I should have never gotten into the car in the first place. But as the heavy door swung open, revealing the warmth and light within, all I could think was that for tonight, at least, Jamie would be safe and dry. What I didn't realize then, couldn't have known, was that Daniel Castellano had been watching me for weeks, that our meeting in the rain was no accident, that the umbrella waiting for us, the baby supplies already stocked in a guest room, the women's clothing in precisely my size hanging in the closet, none of it was coincidence. By the time I stepped across his threshold, I was already his. I just didn't know it yet. The foyer of Daniel's mansion swallowed us in marble and mahogany, the soaring ceiling making me feel even smaller than I already did. A crystal chandelier cast diamonds of light across the polished floor, and somewhere, a fire crackled. The contrast between the storm outside and this sanctuary of wealth was jarring, like stepping from one world into another. "Mrs. Abrams will show you to your room," Daniel said, nodding toward an elegant older woman who appeared silently at his side. Her silver hair was pulled into a neat bun, her black dress simple but clearly expensive. Her eyes, a warm hazel, assessed me without judgment. "The blue suite has been prepared," she said to Daniel. before turning to me with a gentle smile. "You must be exhausted, dear. Let's get you and the little one settled." I clutched Jamie closer, suddenly aware of how we must look. Me in my dripping clothes, hair plastered to my face, Jamie bundled in his worn onesie beneath my jacket. We were rainwater stains on imported silk. "Eleanor." Daniel's voice pulled my attention back. "Mrs. Abrams was a pediatric nurse before coming to work for me. Your son is in good hands with her." Something in his tone, the absolute certainty, the subtle command beneath the reassurance, made me nod despite my reservations. "Thank you," I managed, my voice smaller than I intended. "I'll have dinner sent up in an hour," he continued. "Rest. We'll talk afterward." It wasn't a request. I followed Mrs. Abrams up a sweeping staircase, feeling Daniel's eyes on me until we turned down a hallway lined with what looked like original artwork. Each painting was lit with its own discreet fixture, museum-quality pieces displayed casually, as if priceless art was simply wallpaper in this house. "Here we are, Mrs. Abrams said, opening double doors to reveal a suite larger than my entire apartment. The walls were painted a soft blue-gray, the furnishings cream and navy. A fire already burned in a limestone fireplace, and through an open door, I glimpsed a bathroom bigger than most bedrooms. Most shocking of all was the white wooden crib, positioned near a massive four-poster bed. "Is there anything special the baby needs?" Mrs. Abrams asked, moving to turn down the bed. "Formula preference? Allergies?" I blinked, disoriented by the question and the crib's presence. He's on Enfamil. No allergies that I know of. But how did you—" "Mr. Castellano is thorough," she replied, as if this explained everything. "The bathroom has everything you should need. Robes, towels, toiletries. There are clothes in the closet that should fit both of you." My unease deepened. "Clothes? For both of us?" Mrs. Abrams nodded, seemingly untroubled by my growing alarm. "Would you like me to hold the baby while you shower? Or I can prepare a warm bath for him first." Jamie stirred against my chest, his little face scrunching as he woke. The maternal instinct to protect him warred with the practical need to get him clean and comfortable. I hesitated, then made a decision. "If you could help me bathe him first, I'd appreciate it," I said cautiously. Mrs. Abrams smiled, the wrinkles around her eyes deepening. "Of course, dear." To my surprise, she was indeed skilled with babies. Her movements were efficient, but gentle, as she helped me undress Jamie and test the water temperature in the massive marble tub. She produced baby soap, soft washcloths, and a hooded towel that looked brand new. "How long have you worked for Mr. Castellano?" I asked, trying to sound casual as we bathed Jamie together. "Almost 15 years, she replied, supporting Jamie's head as I washed his tiny chest. "Since he was quite young himself." "And what exactly does he do?" I pressed, hoping for some insight into the man who had rescued us from the rain with such calculated precision. Mrs. Abrams considered the question. "He has various business interests," she said finally. "Investments, real estate, imports. He's a very private person." The non-answer was telling. I decided to try another approach. "Does he often bring strangers home?" Her hands stilled for just a moment before resuming their gentle work. "Mr. Castellano values his privacy," she repeated. "He doesn't entertain often." Jamie splashed happily, oblivious to the undercurrents of our conversation. When he was clean and dressed in a soft new sleeper that fit him perfectly, Mrs. Abrams offered to hold him while I showered. "I'll be right here," she promised, settling into a rocking chair near the fireplace. "Take your time." Reluctantly, I handed Jamie over, watching as he immediately relaxed in her experienced arms. The hot shower was a luxury I hadn't experienced in weeks. Unlimited hot water, pressure that worked out knots I'd forgotten I had, toiletries that smelled of jasmine and sandalwood. I stayed until my fingers pruned, washing away more than just rain and grime. When I finally emerged, wrapped in a plush robe, I found Jamie asleep in Mrs. Abrams' arms, his rosebud mouth slightly open, one tiny hand curled against her cardigan. "There's a nightgown on the bed," she said softly, "and a robe. Dinner will arrive shortly." After she left, I stood dripping on imported rugs, staring at the clothes laid out for me. The nightgown was ivory silk, simple but clearly expensive. Beside it lay matching underwear with the tag still attached, La Perla, in exactly my size. The knowledge that Daniel had somehow anticipated my sizes sent another chill through me. I dressed quickly, transferred Jamie to the crib, and was brushing my damp hair when a soft knock came at the door. A young man in black trousers and a white shirt entered with a covered tray, set it on a small table by the fireplace, and left without a word. The meal was simple but perfect. A bowl of homemade chicken soup, crusty bread still warm from the oven, a small green salad with vinaigrette. There was also a glass of white wine, which I ignored. I needed my wits about me. I had just finished eating when another knock came. This time, it was Daniel. He'd changed from his suit into dark trousers and a charcoal sweater that made his eyes look even darker. "May I come in?" he asked, remaining at the threshold. I nodded, suddenly aware of the silk clinging to my body. I reached for the robe and pulled it on, belting it tightly at the waist. Daniel's gaze flicked to the crib where Jamie slept peacefully, then back to me. "You look better," he observed. Less like a drowned cat. The unexpected touch of humor surprised a small laugh from me. "Thank you for everything. But I have to ask, how did you know my name? And why do you have clothes that fit me? A crib ready for my son?" Daniel moved to the fireplace, staring into the flames for a long moment. "I make it my business to know things," he said finally, "and to be prepared." "That's not an answer." He turned back to me, his expression unreadable. "No, it's not." He gestured to the 2 armchairs flanking the fireplace. "Shall we sit?" I perched on the edge of one chair, hyper-aware of my bare feet on the plush carpet, the silk sliding against my skin, the strange intimacy of being alone with this man while wearing clothes he had provided. "Your husband took everything," Daniel said without preamble. "Not just your savings, but items from your apartment, your car. He left 3 weeks ago, Tuesday evening, while you were working a double shift at Rosalie's diner. He cleaned out your joint account of $3,842 and maxed out your credit card on cash advances." My blood turned to ice. "How could you possibly know that?" Daniel continued as if I hadn't spoken. "He wasn't your husband, though, was he? Just your boyfriend. Jamie's birth certificate lists no father." "Stop," I whispered, trembling now. "How do you know these things?" "He's in Atlantic City," Daniel said, his voice hardening. "He lost most of your money at the Borgata. The rest he spent on a prostitute named Candy and a bus ticket to Miami." Tears stung my eyes, not for Mike, whom I'd already mourned and buried in my heart, but for the violation of having my life laid bare by this stranger. "Why are you telling me this?" Daniel leaned forward, elbows on his knees. In the firelight, his face was all angles and shadows, beautiful in a way that made my chest hurt. "Because you deserve to know the truth. And because I want you to understand that I already know everything about you, Eleanor. Your student loans from the nursing program you had to abandon when you got pregnant. Your mother's death when you were 14. Your father's remarriage to a woman who made it clear you weren't welcome in their new life." Each word was a knife, precise and cutting. I wrapped my arms around myself, a futile shield. "What do you want from me?" Something changed in his expression then. A softening, perhaps, or a shift from businessman to something more human. "Right now? Nothing. You need rest. We'll talk tomorrow." He stood, towering over me, and I had to resist the urge to shrink further into the chair. "One question," he said, his tone almost gentle. "The most important one. Did you love him?" The question caught me off guard. I thought of Mike, his easy smile, the way he'd spin me around the kitchen on Sunday mornings, how he'd read sports statistics to Jamie while the baby was still in my womb. I thought of his gradual withdrawal after Jamie's birth, the growing resentment, the mounting bills, the accusations that I'd trapped him. "I thought I did," I answered honestly, "but love shouldn't feel like drowning." Daniel nodded, as if I'd confirmed something he already knew. "Sleep well, Eleanor. You're safe here." As he reached the door, I found my voice again. "Why me? Why us? There must be dozens of women with children on the streets tonight. Why stop for me?" He paused, hand on the doorknob, but didn't turn around. I told you, I was once that child in the rain. There's more to it than that, I insisted. No one prepares like this for a random act of charity. Now he did turn, and the look in his eyes made me wish I'd remained silent. There was possession there, determination, something ancient and male that had nothing to do with charity. Get some rest, Eleanor, he said again, softer this time. Tomorrow is soon enough for difficult conversations. The door closed behind him with a quiet click, leaving me alone with my sleeping son and a growing sense that I had stepped into something much deeper and more dangerous than a simple rescue from the rain. I moved to the crib, watching Jamie's peaceful breathing, his perfect little features relaxed in sleep. Whatever game Daniel Castellano was playing, whatever his intentions toward us, one thing was clear. He had resources, power, and information I could never hope to match. For tonight we were warm, fed, and safe. Tomorrow, I would need to decide how much of my soul I was willing to barter for my son's security. Because men like Daniel Castellano never gave without expecting something in return. The question was, what exactly did he want from me? I climbed into the massive bed, silk sliding against my skin like water, and stared at the ceiling. Outside, the storm continued to rage, but it seemed distant now, separated from us by wealth and walls and whatever web Daniel had begun to weave around us. Safe, he had said. You're safe here. But as I drifted toward sleep, I couldn't help wondering if I had simply traded one kind of danger for another, far more seductive kind. Morning light filtered through gauzy curtains, casting the blue suite in a dreamlike glow. For a moment, I forgot where I was. The silk sheets, the plush mattress, the unfamiliar weight of luxury surrounding me. Then reality crashed back as Jamie's hungry cries pierced the quiet. I scrambled from bed, rushing to the crib. "I'm here, baby. I'm here," I murmured, lifting his warm, squirming body into my arms. His face was flushed, tiny fists waving in frustration. A soft knock at the door preceded Mrs. Abrams, already dressed and carrying a tray. "I thought I heard our little man," she said, setting down the tray to reveal a bottle already prepared. "Perfect temperature. Mr. Castellano said you'd likely be waking around now." I accepted the bottle, trying not to think about how Daniel seemed to anticipate my every move. Jamie latched on immediately, his earlier distress forgotten. "There's breakfast for you as well," Mrs. Abrams continued, gesturing to the covered dishes on the tray. "And Mr. Castellano asked me to inform you that fresh clothing can be found in the dressing room. He would like you to join him in his study when you're ready. No rush," she added, noting my expression. "He said to take your time." When she left, I sat in the rocking chair, feeding Jamie while my mind raced. The smell of coffee and warm pastries from the breakfast tray made my stomach growl, but anxiety dulled my appetite. What would Daniel want in exchange for his hospitality? What would I be willing to give? After Jamie was fed, changed, and settled on a plush blanket with toys that hadn't been there the night before, I investigated the dressing room. What I found made me freeze in disbelief. Rows of clothing, dresses, pants, blouses, sweaters, all in my size, many still with tags from high-end boutiques. Shoes lined one wall, handbags another. In built-in drawers I found lingerie, sleepwear, even casual clothes for lounging. A separate section held baby clothes in varying sizes, as if designed to grow with Jamie over time. This wasn't impulsive charity, this was preparation. Meticulous, calculated, and deeply unsettling. I selected the most modest outfit I could find: dark jeans, a simple cream sweater, and flat shoes. The mirror reflected a woman I barely recognized, the designer clothes transforming me from harried, exhausted single mother to someone who might belong in this world of wealth and power. The illusion was thin, though. No cashmere sweater could disguise the uncertainty in my eyes or the tension in my shoulders. With Jamie in my arms, I ventured out of the suite for the first time. The hallway stretched in both directions, lined with closed doors and more artwork. I hesitated, unsure which way to turn. "The study is downstairs, east wing," came a voice startling me. A man in a dark suit stood at attention near the stairs. Security, not household staff. His build was similar to Marco's from the car, muscular beneath the tailored jacket. "I can escort you, Miss Thompson," I nodded, swallowing my questions about how he knew my name or destination. As we descended the grand staircase, Jamie babbled happily, reaching for the crystal drops of the chandelier with chubby fingers. The guard led me through corridors of marble and mahogany to a set of double doors, knocked once, and opened them without waiting for a response. "Ms. Thompson and the child, sir," he announced, then stepped aside to let us enter. Daniel's study was less imposing than I had imagined. Bookshelves lined 3 walls, filled with leather-bound volumes that appeared well-read rather than decorative. A large desk dominated the space, but he wasn't seated behind it. Instead, he stood by tall windows overlooking manicured gardens, a phone to his ear. "Handle it," he said tersely into the phone before disconnecting the call. He turned, his expression softening almost imperceptibly when he saw Jamie in my arms. "Eleanor, I trust you slept well." "Yes, thank you," I replied, suddenly very aware of how I stood, too straight, too stiff, like a supplicant before royalty. Daniel crossed the room, his movements fluid and confident. He stopped closer than social norms dictated, studying Jamie with undisguised interest. "He has your eyes," he observed. "Though the rest is—" He trailed off, something dark flashing across his features. "May I?" The request to hold my son surprised me. Daniel didn't strike me as the type of man who sought physical contact with babies. Still, I found myself transferring Jamie into his waiting arms, our fingers brushing in the exchange. Daniel held him with unexpected competence, supporting his head and back properly. Jamie stared up at this new person, his expression curious rather than fearful. "He's calm," Daniel noted. "Trusting. Like his mother." I bristled at the implication. "I'm not trusting," I countered. "Just practical." A smile touched his lips. "Is that what we're calling it?" He returned his attention to Jamie, who had become fascinated with the expensive watch on his wrist. "You should know that I've taken certain liberties while you slept." My body tensed. "What does that mean?" Daniel gestured toward a leather sofa near the fireplace. "Sit, please." I obeyed, perching on the edge of the cushion as he joined me, still holding Jamie with surprising ease. "I had my attorney file for an emergency stay on your eviction," he said. "Your belongings are being packed as we speak, and will be placed in secure storage until you decide what you'd like done with them." My mouth opened, then closed. "You can't just—" "I also settled your outstanding debts," he continued, as if I hadn't spoken. "Rent, utilities, credit cards. Your student loans have been paid in full." The room seemed to tilt. "Why would you do that?" Daniel's dark eyes locked with mine. "Because I can, and because you needed it done." "I can't repay you," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I'm not asking you to." Jamie squirmed in his arms, and Daniel handed him back to me with the same careful precision. Our fingers touched again, longer this time, and something electric passed between us. Awareness, perhaps, or warning. "What do you want, then?" I asked, clutching Jamie like a shield. Daniel stood, moving to pour coffee from a silver carafe on a side table. "Sugar? Cream?" "Black is fine," I answered automatically, impatience rising. "Please don't avoid the question." He handed me the cup, his expression contemplative. "What I want," he said slowly, "is to offer you a proposition." My throat tightened. "What kind of proposition?" "A practical arrangement," he replied, sitting across from me now. "You need security, stability for your son, a future beyond minimum wage and constant struggle." "And what do you need?" I asked, the coffee cooling untouched in my hands. His eyes never left mine. "Companionship, a family, an heir." The implication hung between us, both outrageous and terrifyingly logical. "You want me to be what? Your mistress?" Daniel's expression hardened slightly. "I'm offering you marriage, Eleanor. Legal, binding, with all the protections and privileges that entails." The cup nearly slipped from my fingers. "That's insane. You don't know me." "I know everything about you," he corrected. "Your medical history, your academic records, your family background, your financial situation, your work history, the fact that you wanted to be a nurse before life intervened." He paused. "I know you're intelligent, resilient, and fiercely protective of your child. I know you have no family support, no safety net, and limited options. Each word felt like an invasion, clinical and cold. That's not knowing me, I said quietly. That's surveillance. Perhaps, he conceded, but it's given me enough information to know you're suitable. Suitable, I repeated, the word bitter on my tongue. Like a breeding mare. For the first time, a flash of genuine anger crossed his face. I'm offering you and your son a life of privilege and protection, everything you could never provide for him on your own. The truth of his words stung worse than any insult. Jamie deserved better than shelter uncertainty and dollar store diapers. Better than a mother working double shifts just to keep them afloat. Why me? I asked again, the question that had haunted me since the moment his car stopped in the rain. You could have anyone. Someone from your world, someone beautiful, educated, connected. Daniel was silent for so long I thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice had lost its businesslike tone. My mother was 16 when she had me. My father was a man who saw an opportunity in her vulnerability. He used her, then discarded her when she became inconvenient. I clutched Jamie tighter, maternal instinct flaring at the implication. We lived on the streets, in shelters, wherever she could find work. Until one night, during a storm much like yesterday's, she left me under an awning while she... He paused, jaw tightening. While she earned enough for our next meal. Horror washed over me as I understood what he wasn't saying. She never came back, Daniel continued, his voice detached now. Later, I learned she had been killed by her client. I was 7 years old. I spent the next 3 years in the system before a distant relative finally claimed me. I'm sorry, I whispered, meaning it. His eyes refocused on me, present again. You remind me of her, not in appearance, in spirit. The determination to protect your child at any cost. But that doesn't explain why you want to marry me. Daniel set down his cup, leaning forward. I built my empire from nothing, Eleanor. I clawed my way out of poverty through intelligence, ruthlessness, and absolute focus. I have wealth, power, respect. What I don't have is legacy, and you want Jamie to be that legacy? I asked, pieces falling into place. You want to adopt my son? I want to give him my name, Daniel corrected. To raise him as my own, to provide him opportunities I never had until it was almost too late. His gaze intensified. And yes, I want more children, heirs of my blood. The implications made my cheeks burn. This is medieval. Arranging a marriage with a stranger for dynastic purposes, a smile ghosted across his lips. The practice has endured for millennia, because it works. Emotional attachment is fleeting. Practical arrangements endure. And if I refuse, then Marco will drive you wherever you wish to go, with enough money to start fresh. No strings, no obligations. Your debts will remain settled. The generosity of the alternative offer surprised me. Just like that? Just like that, he confirmed. Though I should mention that the offer expires today. I'm not a man who leaves things to chance or wastes time on uncertainty. Jamie began to fuss. Perhaps sensing my tension, I bounced him gently, buying time to think. I would need conditions. Daniel's expression shifted to one of interest. Name them. I want to finish my nursing degree, I said, the words tumbling out before I could second-guess myself. I need purpose beyond being your wife. The word felt strange on my tongue. He nodded. Acceptable. What else? Jamie comes first. Always. His well-being, his happiness. Naturally. He would be my son in every way that matters. I took a deep breath. And I would need time to get to know you. Before... I couldn't finish the sentence, my face heating again. Daniel watched me carefully, something almost predatory in his gaze. Separate bedrooms, then. Until you're ready. I'm not a monster, Eleanor. I don't take unwilling women to my bed. The blunt statement made me look away. How long would this arrangement last? Until death, he said simply. I don't believe in divorce. Whatever marriage I enter will be permanent. Permanent. The word echoed in my mind, heavy with implication. A lifetime bound to this dangerous, powerful man. A lifetime of security for Jamie. A lifetime of never having to worry about shelter or food or opportunity. I need time to think, I said finally. You have until tonight, Daniel replied, standing to signal the end of our conversation. 7 o'clock. We'll have dinner and you'll give me your answer. As if summoned by unspoken command, the door opened, and Mrs. Abrams appeared. I can take the little one for his nap if you'd like, she offered. Give you some time to yourself. I hesitated, then made a decision. Thank you. That would be helpful. I kissed Jamie's forehead before handing him over, watching as Mrs. Abrams cooed softly to him. When they left, I turned back to Daniel, who was watching me with that same unreadable expression. The gardens are particularly peaceful for thinking, he suggested. Marco can show you the grounds. It was a dismissal, but also an opportunity. Space to breathe, to consider the impossible choice before me. As I reached the door, his voice stopped me. Eleanor, he called, softer now. Whatever you decide, know that it's been a long time since I've wanted something as much as I want you to say yes. The raw honesty in his voice followed me as I left the study, haunting me with possibilities I had never dared to imagine. The gardens were as immaculate as everything else in Daniel's world. Carefully planned, meticulously maintained, beautiful in a controlled way that spoke of power rather than whimsy. I wandered stone paths between manicured hedges and seasonal blooms, Marco's presence a constant shadow 30 paces behind me. My mind churned with impossible choices. Marriage to a virtual stranger, a dangerous man with obvious secrets, versus returning to a life of grinding poverty and constant insecurity. A life where Jamie would have everything, versus a life where I would have my independence. Safety versus freedom. Luxury versus dignity. I found a stone bench beside a small reflecting pool and sat, watching koi fish glide beneath lily pads. The fish were beautiful prisoners, I realized. Pampered, protected, but confined nonetheless. Was that what I would become? He's not what you think, came a female voice behind me. I turned to find a young woman approaching. Perhaps a few years younger than me. She wore riding clothes, jodhpurs, polished boots, a fitted jacket, and carried a helmet under one arm. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, her features delicate but strong. I'm sorry, I said, startled by her sudden appearance. She sat beside me without invitation, her posture relaxed but elegant. Daniel, he's not what you think. I glanced back at Marco, who had moved closer but remained at a respectful distance. He showed no concern about this woman's presence, which meant she was known, expected, allowed. And what do I think? I asked cautiously. A smile touched her lips. That he's a monster, a manipulator, a man who collects people like others collect art. She extended her hand. I'm Sophia, by the way, Daniel's sister. I shook her hand automatically, processing this new information. Eleanor, I replied, then frowned. He didn't mention having a sister, Sophia laughed, the sound unexpectedly warm. Of course he didn't. Daniel compartmentalizes his life with surgical precision. I'm the messy variable he can never quite control. She studied me openly. So you're the one he's chosen. The statement made my skin prickle. I haven't agreed to anything. But you will, she said with certainty. They always do. Ice formed in my chest. They. Sophia's expression softened. That came out wrong. There haven't been many. Only 2 serious prospects before you. Neither worked out. What happened to them? I asked, not entirely sure I wanted the answer. Nothing sinister, she assured me, seeming to read my thoughts. The first couldn't handle the lifestyle. The security, the restrictions, the constant awareness of wealth and power. The second, she hesitated. Let's just say her interests were financial rather than familial. I absorbed this, wondering where I might fit in this pattern. Why are you telling me this? Sophia sighed, looking out over the gardens. Because my brother, for all his brilliance, is terrible at explaining himself. He sees the world as a series of transactions and strategic moves, but his heart, she tapped her chest, his heart is more complicated than he lets on. He told me about your mother, I said quietly. Surprise flickered across her face. Did he? That's Daniel
unusual.
rarely speaks of the past. We have certain similarities in our situations, I explained vaguely. Sophia nodded slowly. The single mother part, yes, though from what I gather, your circumstances are quite different from hers. She paused. Our mother was an addict, you see, brilliant but broken. She loved Daniel fiercely, but her demons loved her more. The revelation shifted something in my understanding of Daniel, the controlled exterior, the need for power and security, the obsession with legacy. After he found me, Sophia continued, everything changed. I was 14, living with a foster family in Boston. He was 22, already building his empire. He spent 3 years and a fortune tracking me down. I'm only his half-sister, different fathers. But to Daniel, blood is everything. He found you, I repeated, thinking of the resources he'd deployed to investigate me. And brought you here? Gave me a home, an education, opportunities I never dreamed possible. Her voice held genuine warmth. Daniel can be controlling, possessive, even frightening when crossed. But he protects what's his with everything he has. I'm not his, I said firmly. Sophia's smile was gentle but knowing. Yet. She stood, brushing invisible dust from her riding pants. The choice is yours, of course, but if you're worried about Jamie, don't be. Daniel would die before letting harm come to a child in his care. It's his one absolute principle. As she turned to leave, I called after her. Why did you come talk to me? She looked back, her expression serious now. Because Daniel deserves happiness, even if he doesn't know how to seek it properly, and because everyone should go into a Castellano arrangement with their eyes open. She nodded toward the main house. 7 o'clock. He'll be wearing the blue tie. I watched her walk away, her words echoing in my mind. Everyone should go into a Castellano arrangement with their eyes open, as if this were a normal business transaction rather than a life-altering decision. I spent the rest of the afternoon with Jamie, playing on a blanket in a sunny corner of the vast house where Mrs. Abrams had set up an impromptu nursery. My son seemed completely at ease in these opulent surroundings, giggling at new toys and falling asleep in a crib worth more than everything I'd ever owned. At 6, Mrs. Abrams appeared with a dress, midnight blue silk, that flowed like water when I held it up. Mr. Castellano thought you might like this for dinner, she said, laying it carefully across the bed. Beside it, she placed a velvet box. And these. Inside the box nestled a simple pearl necklace with matching earrings, elegant rather than ostentatious, but clearly valuable. The gesture felt like both offering and claim. Jamie will be well cared for while you dine, Mrs. Abrams assured me, misreading my hesitation. I'll be with him the entire time. I nodded, throat tight with emotions I couldn't name. Thank you. When she left, I sat on the bed, the dress cool beneath my fingertips. What was I doing here? Playing dress-up in a world I didn't belong to, contemplating a bargain that would change Jamie's life. And mine. Forever. But what was the alternative? Return to nothing, to uncertainty and fear. At precisely 7, I descended the main staircase, the silk dress whispering around my ankles, the pearls cool against my throat. My hair fell in loose waves around my shoulders, my face bare of makeup save for a touch of mascara and lip gloss I'd found in the bathroom. Daniel waited at the bottom of the stairs, his gaze tracking my descent with an intensity that made my skin warm. He wore a charcoal suit with a blue tie that perfectly matched my dress. Planned, coordinated, controlled, like everything else in his world. You look beautiful, he said simply when I reached him. Thank you, I replied, noticing how he didn't touch me. No hand at my back, no kiss on the cheek, nothing to suggest intimacy or possession. Not yet. He led me to a dining room where a single table had been set for 2, candles casting golden light across fine china and crystal. A fireplace crackled at one end of the room, the flames reflected in polished silver. Wine? He offered after I was seated. Just a little, I agreed, wondering if alcohol would make this easier or more dangerous. The meal progressed with impeccable service from staff who appeared and disappeared like ghosts. We spoke of neutral topics, the unseasonable weather, the history of the house, built in 1897 by a shipping magnate, acquired by Daniel 10 years ago, the gardens I'd toured earlier. It wasn't until dessert, a delicate chocolate soufflé that melted on my tongue, that Daniel finally addressed the question hanging between us. "Have you made your decision?" he asked, his voice level, giving nothing away. I set down my spoon, meeting his gaze across the flickering candlelight. "I have conditions," I said, surprised by the steadiness of my own voice. "Additional ones." Interest sparked in his dark eyes. "I'm listening." "I want everything in writing. A legal contract that protects Jamie and me if things don't work out." Daniel nodded once. "My attorneys will draft whatever you require." "I want to finish my nursing degree," I continued. "Not just classes, a full career if I choose. As I said earlier, that's acceptable." I took a deep breath. "I want honesty about your business. All of it. I won't live in ignorance of where the money comes from or what risks might touch Jamie." His expression tightened almost imperceptibly. "Some details are better left." "No," I interrupted, finding courage I didn't know I possessed. "I need to know what I'm agreeing to, what world I'm bringing my son into." Daniel studied me for a long moment, then inclined his head. "You'll have as much transparency as is safe for you to have." It wasn't a complete victory, but it was something. "And I want your word that if I ever feel Jamie is in danger from anything or anyone connected to you, you'll let us leave. No questions, no pursuit." This condition made his jaw clench, a muscle ticking beneath the smooth skin. "You're asking me to agree to lose my family on your subjective assessment of danger. I'm asking you to put Jamie's safety above your desire to possess us," I countered. We stared at each other across the table, the first real battle of wills between us. Finally, he gave a sharp nod. "If, and only if, there is genuine danger to the child that I cannot mitigate, I would allow it. But it would have to be real, Eleanor. Not imagined, not exaggerated, and not manufactured as an excuse." It was as much as I could hope for. I took a sip of water, gathering my thoughts for the final condition. "And I want your promise that you'll try, genuinely try, to make this a real marriage. Not just an arrangement, not just a transaction." Surprise flickered across his features before he controlled it. "What exactly does that mean to you?" "It means that if I'm giving you my life, my body, my future," I said softly, "I want something more than financial security in return. I want the possibility of respect, of affection, of partnership." Daniel's expression shifted, something unreadable moving behind his eyes. "You want me to love you," he said, the words neither question nor accusation. "I want you to be open to it," I clarified. "For both of us. I don't want to live the rest of my life as a glorified employee." He was silent for a long moment, fingertips resting lightly on the stem of his wineglass. "Love is unpredictable, Eleanor, dangerous. It makes people irrational, vulnerable." His voice had a distant quality, as if reciting lessons learned through painful experience. "I can promise respect, fidelity, protection, consideration for your happiness. But love..." He shook his head slightly. "I won't promise what I'm not certain I can deliver." His honesty, though painful, earned my respect. "Then promise to try," I insisted. "That's all I'm asking. That this isn't just a business transaction to you." "It never was," he said quietly. The simple admission hung between us, weighted with implications neither of us was ready to examine. "Is that a yes?" he pressed, setting down his glass. I took a deep breath, feeling as though I stood at the edge of a cliff. "Yes, I'll marry you." Something flashed in his eyes, triumph, relief, possession. There and gone so quickly I might have imagined it. He reached into his jacket pocket and withdrew a small velvet box, placing it on the table between us. "I had hoped you'd agree," he said, pushing the box toward me. My fingers trembled slightly as I opened it. Inside nestled a ring unlike any I'd seen before, a large oval diamond surrounded by smaller sapphires, set in platinum. It looked antique, valuable beyond measure, heavy with history. "It was my grandmother's," Daniel explained, watching me closely. "She gave it to me before she died, made me promise I would only give it to a woman worthy of being a Castellano." The gesture struck me unexpectedly. Not a new ring purchased for the occasion, but a family heirloom, a piece of his closely guarded history. I lifted it from the box, the stones catching the candlelight. "May I?" he asked, extending his hand. I placed the ring in his palm, then offered my left hand. Daniel slid the ring onto my finger with deliberate care, his touch lingering longer than necessary. The ring fit perfectly, another detail he had somehow anticipated. "We'll be married Saturday," he said, his tone leaving no room for negotiation. "Small ceremony here at the house. Just family. This Saturday?" I blinked. "That's only 3 days away. I see no reason to wait. The paperwork is already being prepared, including adoption papers for Jamie." He squeezed my hand gently. "Unless you need more time?" The question seemed genuine, his first real concession to my feelings over his preferences. "No," I said after a moment. "Saturday is fine." His smile was small, but real. "Good. Sophia will help with whatever you need." As if mentioning his sister had summoned her, the dining room door opened and Sophia entered, her earlier riding clothes exchanged for an elegant black dress. "I take it congratulations are in order?" she asked, her gaze falling to the ring on my finger. Daniel stood, gesturing for her to join us. "Eleanor has agreed to become my wife." Sophia's smile seemed genuine as she kissed my cheek. "Welcome to the family, then." She turned to her brother. "The Millers just arrived. They're waiting in the study." Daniel's expression hardened. "I told Marco no interruptions tonight." "It's urgent, apparently," Sophia replied, something meaningful passing between them. Something about the Baltimore shipment. I watched the silent communication, reminded again that I was entering a world with rules and dangers I didn't yet understand. Daniel turned to me, his expression softening slightly. "Business that can't wait, I'm afraid," he said, sounding genuinely regretful. "Sophia will see you back to your room." Before I could respond, he lifted my hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to my knuckles just above the ring. The gesture was old-fashioned, courtly, yet sent unexpected heat coursing through me. "Until tomorrow," he murmured, then released my hand and left the room with measured strides that nonetheless conveyed urgency. Sophia looped her arm through mine as we climbed the grand staircase. "So, you said yes," she observed, no surprise in her tone. "Was there ever any doubt?" I asked, echoing her earlier certainty. She laughed softly. "With Daniel, very little happens by chance." We paused outside the blue suite, where I could hear Jamie's soft babbling from within. "He's a good man," Sophia said unexpectedly. "Complicated, controlling, sometimes frightening, but good at his core. Remember that in the difficult moments." I studied her face, searching for the truth behind her words. "Will there be many difficult moments?" Her smile turned sad. "In any marriage? Yes. In this one," she hesitated. "Let's just say Daniel's world comes with unique challenges. The Baltimore shipment," I said, testing the waters. "What is it?" Sophia's expression closed slightly. "That's Daniel's business to explain." "Which he won't," I guessed. "He will," she corrected. "If you make him understand why it matters to you. Daniel responds to logic, not emotion. Remember that, too." With a final squeeze of my hand, she left me at my door. I entered to find Mrs. Abrams rocking a sleepy Jamie, his eyelids heavy. "He's been an angel," she reported, transferring him to my arms. "No trouble at all." After she left, I changed into the silk nightgown, removed the pearl jewelry, but kept the engagement ring on. Its weight felt strange, significant. I laid Jamie in his crib, then curled up in the window seat overlooking the gardens, now silvered by moonlight. What had I done? Agreed to marry a man I barely knew. A man with obvious secrets and power I couldn't begin to comprehend. All for security, for Jamie's future, for an escape from the desperate uncertainty of my previous life. A soft knock interrupted my thoughts. Expecting Mrs. Abrams, I called quietly, "Come in." The door opened to reveal Daniel, his tie loosened, a tumbler of amber liquid in his hand. "May I?" he asked, remaining at the threshold. I nodded, drawing my knees closer to my chest as he entered and closed the door behind him. "I apologize for the interruption earlier," he said, moving to stand by the window. "Some matters can't wait, even for engagement dinners." "The Baltimore shipment," I said, watching his reaction carefully. His expression didn't change, but something in his posture tightened. Sophia mentioned it? Only the name, I assured him. Is it something I should be concerned about? Daniel studied me for a long moment, then seemed to come to a decision. He sat in the armchair adjacent to my window seat, setting his drink on a side table. I import luxury goods, he said carefully. Art, antiquities, specialty items. Sometimes the paperwork is complex. Occasionally there are issues with customs officials or regulatory bodies. It wasn't the whole truth. I could see that in the measured precision of his words, but it was more than I had expected. Is it legal? I asked bluntly. A smile touched his lips. Not always entirely, no. The honesty surprised me. And that doesn't bother you? Laws are written by men, Eleanor. Often flawed men with limited understanding of the world's complexities. He leaned forward slightly. I operate by a different code. My own moral framework. Which is? Protect family above all else. Honor commitments. Never break your word once given. His eyes held mine. Never harm the innocent, especially children. And always, always repay debts, whether of gratitude or vengeance. A chill ran through me at the last part. Vengeance, I repeated softly. Justice, he amended. The kind that courts and laws often fail to provide. Jamie stirred in his crib, making small snuffling sounds. Daniel's attention immediately shifted to him, his expression softening in a way I hadn't seen before. He looks like you when he sleeps, Daniel observed. Peaceful, trusting. He has no reason not to be, I said. He's never known real hardship, and he never will. Daniel promised, his voice hardening with conviction. Not while I draw breath. The vehemence of his declaration touched something in me, the part that had been carrying the weight of Jamie's future alone for so long. Tears pricked unexpectedly at my eyes. Daniel noticed immediately, moving from the chair to sit beside me on the window seat. What is it? He asked, brows drawing together. Nothing, I said, brushing at my eyes. It's been a long time since anyone else worried about him, about us. Since it wasn't all on me, understanding dawned in his expression. Cautiously, as if approaching a wild animal, he reached out to brush a tear from my cheek. The touch was gentle, warm, startling in its tenderness. You're not alone anymore, Eleanor, he said softly. Whatever else happens between us, whatever challenges we face, you'll never have to carry that burden alone again. I don't know which of us moved first. Perhaps me, seeking comfort. Perhaps him, offering it. But somehow my head came to rest against his shoulder, his arm slipping around me with careful restraint. We sat like that for a long time, watching moonlight paint silver patterns across the floor. Not lovers, not yet friends, but something in between. Two survivors of different storms, finding unexpected shelter in each other. When Jamie's soft cry finally broke the silence, Daniel released me without hesitation. I moved to the crib, lifting my son and bringing him back to the window seat. May I? Daniel asked, holding out his arms. I placed Jamie in them, watching as my son studied this new man with solemn eyes before breaking into a gummy smile. Daniel's face transformed at that smile, something raw and vulnerable flickering across his features before disappearing behind his usual controlled mask. Saturday, he said, gently bouncing Jamie. You'll be a Castellano, both of you. Yes, I agreed, the full weight of my decision settling over me like a mantle. Heavy, but not crushing. Binding, but also protecting. Outside, clouds drifted across the moon, casting the garden in momentary darkness before revealing it again. Changed somehow in the shifting light, like my life, plunged into shadow by Mike's betrayal, now emerging into a different kind of light. Not the future I had imagined, but perhaps one where Jamie could thrive, where I might find purpose beyond mere survival. And perhaps, in time, where a man who had never known true family might learn what it meant to love rather than simply possess. Daniel handed Jamie back to me, his fingers brushing mine in the exchange. Good night, Eleanor, he said, rising to leave. At the door, he paused, looking back at us with an expression I couldn't quite read. I'll see you in the morning. Good night. I whispered as the door closed behind him. Jamie yawned against my shoulder, his warm weight an anchor in the sea of uncertainty I had chosen to navigate. Whatever happened next, whatever secret still lurked in Daniel's world, one thing was certain. Our lives had irrevocably changed the moment that black car stopped in the rain. For better or worse, we were now part of Daniel Castellano's world, claimed, protected, perhaps even cherished in his own complex way. And somewhere deep inside, beneath the fear and uncertainty, I found myself hoping that my final condition might someday be met, that what had begun as a transaction might, against all odds, transform into something real.